This is a Winston draft that we did at the Portland Game Store in Portland, Oregon. And if you don't know what a Winston draft is, it is a draft format created by Richard Garfield to allow two people to have a draft experience. And so each person is responsible for bringing 3 packs, which is roughly 45 cards each. They are all opened and then shuffled together. And then both players will end up drafting from that combined pool of cards face down. For sorcery specifically, since some of the foils, the foil inserts in sorcery are double-sided, what we decided to do was just pull them out. And the person that bought the packs will just claim that, put that in their collection, and it will not be part of the draft pool. We did have a brief talk as well about kind of any other like high value hits in the card pool. The only like real high value hits worth having a discussion about, in my opinion, would be like if we hit a curio. So we talked a little bit about that, and we were both comfortable with just saying, like it's the randomly shuffled. We're going to randomly draft, and if you hit a high value card, you hit a high value card. But every time I do a Winston draft with someone, I like to kind of have that conversation with them before we get started, just so everyone's expectations are kind of on the same page. And some people might say, well, if we pull a curio, maybe we should split the value on it or something like that. And I'd be okay with that if that's what they want to do, or if they wanted to say like, yeah, like, hey, like if we pull the foils, let's go ahead and retain those from our own packs. In this case, like I said though, like we just decided to do to take the foils out and keep them based on who opened them for simplicity's sake. So we wouldn't have to kind of create a proxy card and stick it back into the deck and shuffle. In the video, you can see some of the cards when I'm shuffling, but the perspective, like my perspective when I was shuffling the cards, it was completely blind. Like I could not see the bottom of the deck at all. And we did make a few jokes about the riffle shuffling. I know that is a little unsettling for some card collectors to see, just in case there is a high value hit in those packs. But I mean, I feel like a light riffle shuffle unsleeved here is not going to do a tremendous amount of damage to those cards. So I mean, likely, like, if we shuffled them and then you pulled out a card, you would probably be hard pressed to tell that it had been shuffled and it was not pack fresh. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on our draft now. And so the way it works is that we have a single pile of cards here, and we pull cards off at the top to make 3 separate draft piles. Right now we're rolling. We're doing a roll off to see who goes first. And we just we kept hitting the same number, and eventually I believe that I take the high roll here. So I will go first. I'll have the first pick. So we're pulling cards off the top of the pile to make 3 face down piles of cards. And the player whose turn it is to draft will start from the left. They'll look at the first pile, decide if they want anything in there or not, and the second pile, and decide if they want anything or not, and so on until they get to the end of the pile. And if they don't like anything that they see from any of the 3 piles, then they can pull a top card blind off of the top of the deck, and that's going to be their pick. And that's what I ended up doing here. Mostly just because the first 2 picks were, I think, like 2 power minions. You really want something, you know, with a little more heft to it. I could have taken that Hostegel on the 3rd pile. It's a 3 power for 3, which isn't bad, but I didn't know if I wanted to be locked into that double air threshold at that point in time. Steve's looking at Polar Bears and Sunken Treasure. I think he spent a little bit of time considering this one. Maybe just because there's a little bit of synergy built into that. If, you know, like Polar Bears is a water minion. It gives you some additional threat utility because you can attack on the back from the back row. And then Sunken Treasure is something that a submerged minion could bring up for some additional card draw. Looking at this pile again, I don't see anything worth taking as a first pick on the pile there. Bull Demons of Adam is a 5-drop for 5 with a relevant ability, so I go ahead and pick that. Mostly because the power level on it is pretty high, and it can be difficult finding minions that start to get into that 4 to 6 power range in the beta set. We're drafting 6 packs of beta, so the only set here is beta. So the only cards that we're going to see here are from that card pool, and that kind of sets the tone for how you are going to handle the draft. So the beta set has 403 cards in it, and the distribution can vary wildly. So that's a pretty good pile that Steve is looking at. Hostegel, Plume Pegasus in the same element, and a Violimp. I would be surprised if he didn't take. Yeah, he takes it. There's just a lot of value. There's enough value in the pile at that point that would make it worthwhile. Even if there was just a Hostegel and a Violimp, that would be value worth taking. I take a look at this one. There's a lot of 2-drops in there. The pile is getting pretty big, so it's not the worst pick, and I think I ultimately do take that one just because it was up to 5 cards. There were 3 2-drops in there, and there was also a teleport. Teleport has 2 threshold air, which is not... it can be a little bit more difficult to hit that as opposed to, say, a blink, but you're not guaranteed to see a blink either. So Steve is looking at this fresh pile, first pile with a Spark Mage in it, and now he's debating whether or not he wants to take that avatar. When you're drafting, if you don't draft an avatar, you're going to be taking the Spell Slinger, which is the default avatar. So I think he took a while looking at that to see if that was something that he was interested in. House Arn Bannerman and Border Militia are pretty good in this pile. I would be surprised if he didn't end up taking it. He's thinking about it, and he decides to put it back, which is a surprising choice, honestly. I think maybe at this point in time he was drafting into a couple other elements and didn't feel like he was in Earth at that point. But I feel like those 2 cards together are strong enough on their own to warrant just grabbing them and seeing if you can make that element work in your deck. So I'm looking at this pile now, and it has Spark Mage and Fade, which is matched elements into it. And I'm debating whether or not to take it. Ultimately, I do decide to take it. The ability itself, you're not going to get a lot of value out until basically like mid to late game. So I'm just looking at it as like an additional, a built-in finisher option for the avatar. So there's definitely more stuff in there now. Mad Dash is not that great. Azure Caravan, again, like not a super great minion, but in like a beta only limited format, getting a 4-body is potentially worth it, even though it costs 5 mana to get out there. The average power curve on minions in beta is around 3. And taking a look at that, I see Spire Lich, which is not that great. Cave Troll is a pretty good pick, but at that point I wasn't super heavy into Earth, so I didn't know how I felt about that one. Puppet Master, it can be swingy, but it is so fragile that, and for 6 mana I decided to pass on that. I do end up taking this last pile just because it had the Firebolts in it. I was already somewhat into fire, or I was considering being into fire just because I had the bull. So Steve, looking at the first pile again, and this pile doesn't look too bad. It gives you a lot of options. Tufted Turtles is a pretty good pick in limited, even though it can be difficult to be in water element in beta. Again, Puppet Master, I feel, is kind of a trap in limited. It could potentially swing the game for you, but it is so fragile that I think that your opponent's going to have a fairly easy time removing it. So ultimately, I think Steve took that just, for the value of having a potential bomb for his deck, as well as a 2-body. So I'm looking at this pile again, and I decide to pass on it just because it's pretty mismatched. There wasn't a ton in air, and I was pretty sure I was going to try to run that Spark Mage at this point, since I drafted it. So I decided to take a top deck here, and I get a Snow Leopard. It's not the best card to pull, but at least it was in the air element, which is what I was leaning towards with that avatar. So this pile is getting pretty big, and I think if I was Steve, I would probably take it. I think he's thinking about it. Oh, he decides to pass, though. There's just a lot of stuff in there. It's pretty good value. Ice Lance is a pretty good card to pull in limited, if you're able to at least splash water. Water is not a super strong element in beta, but it is like if you get the right cards, you can splash it. The only exciting thing in this pile looks like a Shifting Sands, and it's so conditional. Like, you have to already have the deserts, and if you haven't drafted any deserts, it's not really worth it. So he goes for the top deck and pulls a Wall of Air, which is not a great pull, but sometimes you gamble and sometimes you lose. So I'm looking at this pile at this point, and just like, there is a lot of value in here, and I do end up taking it, mostly just because I see that Cloud Spirit. And the Cloud Spirit, again, it's going to be a 2-drop. It has a lot of mobility and evasion, and it also has 2 threshold, air threshold, which the Spark Mage keys off of for its damage ability. a lot of water in this pile now, and a lot of like decent water, like Coral Kelpie, like 3-drop for 3, the Deep Sea Mermaids for card draw, and the Ice Lance is a pretty good pick. And Steve decides to pick that. I think if I had seen that, I would have thought twice about it. But at this point, like, I'm pretty heavy into air and probably taking fire. And then I see Poison Nova, and then I definitely decide, yeah, I'm going to be in fire as well. So I'm looking at a fire air deck. So Steve sees Apprentice Wizard in a Sandworm. Entangle's also a pretty good card too. That's a pretty good pile to snag. And we're just talking about that last pile now because it's been a couple turns since either of us has seen it, and the card count keeps rising. He decides to pass on that pile, which is shocking. And then there's the Muck Lamprey, which, again, yeah, I would pass on too if I was him. And now he's just staring down, what is this, 7 cards, and yeah, there's a lot of value in here. There's the Petrosian Cavalry, the Heat Ray, some really good hits on fire. The Shifting Sands, if he ends up pulling any deserts, could be good too. So that one was sort of a no-brainer. It's just like there's just a lot of cards, and like 7 cards in the pile, like 2 of them great, 3 or 4 of them okay. I'm looking at this right now, and like, absolutely, I'm going to take it for the Sandworm. Just getting that 4-body in fire, which I'm already like trying to sculpt into my deck, as well as the Wizard in air for the additional value. Steve's looking at this pile now. It has a Disenchant, it has a Lightning Bolt. I think it looks like he's going to take it. Probably for the Lightning Bolt. Disenchant, it's nice to have the option, but in limited and especially in beta only, it's not really like a make it or break it. If you have like a Disenchant or Dispel to deal with artifacts and auras. So I'm looking at this pile now, and I think I end up taking this one just because it has an Ogre Goons in it, which is 3-drop for 3, and I was worried about filling out my minion curve, and it also had 3 minions that were in the 2 elements that I wanted. Steve's looking at this pile. It is all earth and all kind of middling earth choices. So I think he's just weighing whether or not he wants to take it. It's nice that it's all in the same element, but at the same time, it's like they're not really cards that are that exciting. And then he sees the river and the Incinerate, and he decides to take it, probably for the Incinerate, just to have some removal options. So it's now it's my turn to look at this pile. I'm not super jazzed about the Earth cards, but I think I take it just for that tower. The tower is very good on its own, just for its ability to ramp you an additional mana on the turn it comes out. And then also earlier, I had incidentally picked up a Spire Lich, which gets a lot of bonuses if it sits on a tower. So I thought it would be neat if I was able to get some of that synergy out, or at least have the option for it in my deck. So he's looking at an Overpower and a Mountain Pass, which again, I think it's a little difficult to make work in limited. Earthquake is, I would say, a no-brainer. It's such a powerful card, and Even if you weren't necessarily in Earth heavily at that point, I would still take it and then consider if that's something that you could be in. I'm looking at this pile. It has a windmill in it, and it has an Amazon Warriors. I go ahead and take it just because Amazon Warriors is so strong. It's a 5-drop. It was partially a pick to kind of deny Steve that 5-drop, and also partially a pick because I thought at this point maybe I can splash a little bit for Earth, especially when I saw that windmill. Because windmill is already sharing one of my primary element colors. That just means I can get Earth into the deck by taking less Earth sites. So Steve is looking at a Vril Revenant. Can be very good in limited for the mana pump to get damage out, as well as I think he snagged a Desert. Which again, like, deserts are very good and limited too. The ability to just get that extra ping of damage off. And I'm looking at Mask of Mayhem, which is like you can potentially have an explosive turn with it, but it's super risky. Like, it leaves you open to taking double strikes. And I see a lot of value just at least in the elements that I want here, with the Midnight Rogue, the Belmont Longbowmen are a 3 power, and again at that point I was considering doing a 3-color deck at that point and splashing for that Earth threshold. This pile's still fairly weak. Waypoint Portal is not gonna do as much work for you as you'd think in limited. The Wolf might as well be a dead card. It's highly unlikely that you're going to find like 2, let alone 3 of them. Slumbering Giantess can be good if you have the cards to support it. So I think Steve already grabbed a Violimp and a Desert, and I don't know if he had anything else capable of pinging for the damage to wake it up, but that seems like a pretty good pick for him based on what he has already pulled. Again, this pile is still not that exciting. A Geyser added to it doesn't really kind of sweeten the deal that much. A Mortality on its own is not a super strong pick. It is removal, but it's not reliable removal. There are a lot of minions, a lot of mortals in beta, but there is always the chance that you're going to run against something up against something that is not in that keyword. I take that last pile, which was very strong. The Hippogriffs and a Desert. Hippogriffs in general just for the charge, and also the 2 threshold on the cast for Spark Mage. Steve now is like looking at a Cone of Flame on this pile that's been a dud up to this point, and I mean I would take it in a heartbeat, and yeah, he's gonna take it just because Cone of Flame again is it's just a super strong card, and it has the ability to kind of like give you a board wipe, reset the board state, and allow you to kind of like rock back if you're on the back foot. At this point, we're down to 3 piles. I'm gonna go ahead and take this 3-card pile because I mean it has Mortality, which is kind of, you know, like a so-so removal option, and then had Divine Heal, which was very strong. I didn't know if I was pretty sure I wasn't going to run that card. Because if I'm splashing for Earth, I only want things with 1 Earth threshold. But I also didn't want to see that one. I also don't want to see that in Steve's hand. The 7 heal is just really, really strong. And here's a quick look at the deck that I ended up building. I did, I did end up needing to go 3 elements in, and I was starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel on card choices. But I felt pretty good about the minion curve. It had, I think, maybe 16 air cards in it, which I felt was a good enough mix for the Spark Mage to get that ability off. Again, I'm just thinking like late game. I might only need a single damage ping to close out the game if they're on death's door. And here's a quick look at the deck that Steve ended up building. Overall, it looked like a pretty strong deck, at least with the minion curve, although I don't know if he was running maybe a little light on total minions, but the curve at least looked okay. Mad Dash, he has two Mad Dash in there, and I don't know if that was filler or not. You know, it's like when you're just trying to find like that last card or those last two cards. Sometimes take the card with the card draw and to cycle for 2 is your best option. And he has a ton of like really scary cards in here. He's got Earthquake, he's got Cone of Flame, Slumbering Giantess. If he can wake it up, can win the game for him. And then the Bannerman to kind of pump up all of his creatures nearby could be dangerous if he can get that out and make use of it. Border Militia, also worth mentioning, is fairly strong and limited. Just the ability to spam the board with your foot soldier tokens. So those are the 2 decks that we drafted. Stay tuned for the next video where we play a game.